Don't you want to be pretty for your big fight? Well, no one can see your potty mouth because your display's on top, buddy. Hey, what's up everybody? Daniel here from Never Enough Tech. It took longer than I would have hoped, but I'm finally ready to oversee the showdown between the two Korean tech giants' 2020 flagship soundbars. The Samsung Q950T versus the LG SN11RG. You may be old enough to remember that I was not overly kind to the Q950T in my initial review a few weeks ago. In the state I received it, well, excoriation was warranted. I stand by that. This bar produced dialogue that was sometimes extremely muffled, making the TV speakers sound like the upgrade. The surrounds and sub would often not play during 3D audio sessions where a power cycle was needed to fix. Setup was ill-considered as it seemed a very specific sequence needed to be followed to avoid high levels of frustration. The list goes on for sure. I say the initial reviews of the product were at best mixed. My views were not way out of the norm. A firmware update was released about halfway through my initial testing. In general, after more time with the system, I believe stability has been improved, making it an easier product to review and potentially recommend. Since the last review, I've done a fair bit of detective work in an attempt to provide additional context around strange and undesired behavior. The comments section has been invaluable in this pursuit, so keep it up. All this considered, you will find me revising some of my Q950T opinions and doubling down on some as well. Changing gears, I've had over a week to assess the SN11RG. It was certainly more reliable right out of the box. That being said, I will judge these soundbars based on the current software version. While LG and Samsung are very similar companies, both having an unbelievably varied portfolio of products, earbuds to dryers, to vacuums to laptops, maybe a few TVs as well, they have two very different visions of how to style and execute a 2020 flagship soundbar, each with distinct strengths and weaknesses. I swear, give me the good parts of 3 to 4 flagship soundbars and I could make a pretty dang good product. Alright, moving on. Saying the full name of these speakers 4,000 times will break me. I'll mostly be referring to the systems as Q and 11. I'll use Samsung and LG sometimes, and if I'm feeling formal, I'll say the full name. Good with you? Yes? Y'all are the best. Alright, scoreboard, up you go. System costs. The price as of the time of this recording is $1,600 on Amazon, a $200 price drop from the original MSRP. I would maybe consider a price cut this big just several weeks after release as a cautionary sign, though $1,800 was a fairly juiced up price. It's not a Sonos. The 11 is $50 less at $1,500 at Best Buy. The Q costs more even with the price cut and perhaps will jump in price again. I'll give 11 a point here. Hardware, what comes in the box? You can view my unboxing videos for more details, but you know, these two systems are rather similar in terms of what comes in the box. Each system gets you a soundbar, a wireless sub, and 2 wireless rear surrounds, as well as a dedicated remote. You thought I forgot. I could put them out. The 11 is not quite as tall as the Q, leaving more TV visible if planted on a stand right in front of it. Maybe your TV screen is ugly and you would prefer to block it, but I think most of you are aiming to see as much of your TV as possible. The 11 is also quite a bit wider than the Q. It's really meant to be paired with a 65-inch TV or bigger. Since it looks rather odd if your soundbar is wider than your TV, the LG is a poor aesthetic partner with TVs under 65 inches, certainly below 55 inches. Something to keep in mind because I'm sure a lot of you have TVs that are smaller than 65 inches. The 11 surrounds are just a smidge wider and a smidge taller and a lot deeper than the Qs, which maybe makes it look a little less appealing mounted to a wall. The 11 surrounds definitely edge into the medium-sized popcorn container. They both have little feet. The Q sub bucks the trend by being taller and significantly deeper than the 11 sub. Extras. The Q power cords are all 5 feet. The 11's power cords are all a little shorter or a little longer than 5 feet. Also, both systems provide wall brackets for the bar. The S goes a little further, providing wall mounts for the surrounds as well. Both Samsung and LG are plenty happy to have you find that extra screw to connect mounts to the wall though. In a somewhat passive-aggressive move, the 11s come with an optical cable, not an HDMI cable. So that's like building a spacious, beautiful house with no doors, as an optical cable would lock you out of the highest tier audio formats. I'm docking 11 with a weird face. 11's prestige partnership is with Meridian Technologies, a boutique English speaker technology company, perhaps mainly known for its automotive and airline partnerships. You may have seen Meridian pop up in other LG audio devices like Bluetooth speakers and earbuds. Samsung, who has eaten Harman Kardon, is likely using Harman Kardon technology in the Q950T, as they did with the Q90R. But Samsung still needs a prestige, visible fashion partner. The lucky winner is Kvadrat Fabric, a textile company whose fabric covers the top and front of the Q soundbar. Points are a little hard to distribute here, it's all over the place. Setup. For the 11, just plug stuff in, any order, and it seems to work. Q, there's a specific order you need to follow to set up. Plug in the sub, and then the surrounds, and then the soundbar. Maybe give a little breathing space between each plug-in. Slow walk it. Find a flower to smell. You can watch more of my Q950T review for instructions and problem-solving steps. So here's where I stand. If you designed your setup such that if someone plugged in the soundbar first, they may have a prolonged connection problem, you're doing it wrong. The user should not be able to render the hardware out of service by doing normal stuff to it. At the very least, you should warn the customer with a card instructing them about setup, like LG did putting this card on the top of the packaging explaining the weird way they handle Bluetooth pairing. After plugging in the hardware, you'll want to connect the devices to their respective apps. For the 11, it's the LG Wi-Fi speaker app, dedicated to speakers for better or worse. With the Q, you'll connect to SmartThings, your all-encompassing app, for better or worse. The setup process on both these apps seem to work pretty well. Both setups are ultimately easy, but LG is more conducive to real human behavior, knowing people don't read manuals, and allowing users to plug in the devices in the order they see fit. Design. The Q is going with upholstery chic. The 11 is going with space barge slick. So like when SpaceX is transporting your great-great-great-grandchildren to Mars, to dig holes or whatever, they will be transported in a ship that looks like this. It's really tiring. Okay. The two major design characteristics of the 11 are the visible speakers on top and the wraparound metal grille. For the Q, it's the angled edges covering the wide-angle channels, and the fabric covering the top and front of the bar, as well as the horizontal vents along the side, breaking up the monotony a little bit. These two bars are just so different looking. Neither are hideous, assuming you've lint rolled the Q. Neither are works of art. For both systems, the surrounds and subs are black blocks, nothing special. The Q surrounds and subs are partially covered in Kvadrat fabric. The 11 surrounds have a subtle faux brushed metal pattern on the sides, and a plastic grille covering the top and bottom. The 11 sides and front are covered in a speaker fabric that's less coarse and more supple than the Kvadrat fabric. The Q sub speaker is on the left side, the 11 sub speaker is on the front. Both subs are housed in medium density fiberboard, as it tends to absorb and minimize unwanted vibrations better than wood. I'll give each a point to keep this train moving. Power. The 11 is a 770 watt system. The Q is 546 watts. The 11's power is distributed like this: 350 for the bar, 220 for the sub, and 100 each for each of the rear surrounds. The Q, 246 for the bar, 160 for the sub, and 70 each for the surrounds. Perhaps an interesting difference between the 11 and the Q is how they distribute power amongst the channels. For the Q, the center channels are all 46 watts, and the sides and wides and height channels are all 35 watts. The LG just puts 50 watts on each channel, except for the sub. Would seem to me that for efficiency's sake, more prominent channels like the center channels should get relatively more power. Perhaps an interesting fact. A brute force point for LG. Though I think we should keep in mind the ancient wisdom, it's not the number of watts, it's how you use it. Speaker array. The 11 is a 7.1.4 channel system, which seems to be more and more standard these days. As a reminder, this means there are 7 ear level channels, 1 channel for low bass frequencies, so the sub, and 4 high channels, so upward firing speakers, so 12 channels total. Just looking at the bar itself, it's a 5.0.2 system with a left, center, center right, and right channel, making the 5 ear level channels, and 2 upward firing speakers on both ends, mimicking the height channels as the sound bounces off the ceiling and back down. That's the popular theory anyway. Sometimes you listen to the top and wonder, does this sound even make it to the ceiling? I suppose if the sound gets tired, it'll just kind of fall back down. So either way, one shouldn't ask too many questions. The surrounds are both 1.0.1 channels with a forward and upward firing speaker. The Q9 matches all this but adds wide channels behind the angled edges. More channels the better in theory. The Q gets just a single point as it does not necessarily mean it makes better sound.
Q, and you point to the letter Q, and it goes on like that.
Every channel is comprised of a single woofer, except the center channels that are comprised of 2 woofers and a tweeter. So the centers are capable of the most complex sound. Supported audio formats. In short, The 11 just shines and shines and shines, and fills you with sweetness and light, restores faith in your fellow humans. I feel like the best place to learn about your SN11RG amongst LG materials is with the full manual online and the support sheet. Immediately use this manual that comes with the bar, the simple manual, as a napkin, as it's like 10% manual and 90% legal document. The 11 is clear that it supports high-res audio, or HRA, audio of higher quality than a CD, which is 16-bit and 44.1 kilohertz. High-res is typically characterized by a 24-bit depth or higher with a 96 to 192 kilohertz sampling rate. LG says it upsamples music to 24-bit. I'm not aware of a mechanism to turn it off, so maybe a thanks but no thanks dynamic on that one. Using a visual analogy to explain bit depth, so you're looking outside, watching your horses frolic. Most people can relate to that. Bitrate would be the clarity of the scene. Think of an MP3 as a smudgy window, a CD as a clean window, and high-resolution audio as no window. Sample rate is how many glances you get over time. So the more glances you get, the more of the scene you can take in. So just kind of convert that to listening. I can wait. Okay, pencils down. If you don't have it by now, you never will. A frustrating aspect of researching these soundbars are the inconsistencies between the website, short manuals, long manuals, info sheets. All that being said, the full online manual states that FLAC and WAVE are the two compatible high-res audio formats. And while you can stream via Wi-Fi from high-res subscription services like Tidal, if you're using Chromecast or Google Assistant, only CD quality FLAC is sent out for those platforms. As far as I can tell, the only way to play high-res audio is via the USB port. I was able to play a high-res file from a USB stick. So yes, technically there is support for high-res audio, but you gotta go kinda old school to get there. I was not able to stream via USB with my Mac, but maybe someone smarter out there can make that work. Also, if you have the 11 and believe you're able to get high-res audio over Wi-Fi, please let me know in the comments. I think you can't, but I'd love to get smarter. The 11 absolutely spoils with TV audio codecs. So for surround formats, you get your LPCM support, so your LPCM 5.1s and 7.1 streams will play true. You get the full DTS platter for surround audio, so DTS digital surround, HD master audio, and HD high resolution. For your 3D sound, wait, what's that? Isn't all sound 3D? Very quick, 3D sound is intended to simulate speakers all around you, placing sound scenes in specific locations, bringing a next level of realism to your viewing experience. A quality speaker system will create a convincing 3D bubble of sound around you. Dolby Atmos and DTS:X are the big names in this 3D bubble space. Dolby delivers Atmos via both Dolby Digital Plus, a watered-down Atmos you'll find on streaming services, and Dolby True HD, the real deal, Atmos uncompressed. 11 supports both of these Dolby formats, and not surprisingly, DTS:X as well. The Q does not explicitly state that high-res is supported in the manual or website. I talked to tech support and was told that the system is too new, so not all information is available. So I'm just going with probably not. It does support various uncompressed formats like FLAC, but no clarification if it's at 24-bit. The USB port is for servicing updates, not playing audio files. Samsung tech support has stated over the phone and in forums that LPCM is not supported on their soundbars. Just like Sonos, but somehow it's cool when Sonos doesn't support. If there's one thing I've learned doing this, is that Samsung supporters are very sensitive. The Q950T only supports 2-channel PCM, so this is kind of not great for gamers, and a soundbar with a Game Pro mode. Documentation says DTS surround support is limited to DTS digital surround. The website does not indicate that Dolby Digital is supported, but I was able to select Dolby Digital through my Samsung TV settings, fire up Netflix, and get 5.1 surround. So as far as I'm concerned, Dolby Digital is supported, even if not explicitly mentioned. Honestly, I only have about 72% trust on these manuals. I know how this works, and I suspect the engineers just don't have time to pore over these manuals to get them right, word by word, number by number. Thankfully, the Q does support Dolby True HD and DTS:X. So Samsung falls short in high-res audio, possibly DTS, and LPCM support. I suspect the lack of LPCM support explains a lot of the confusion in the forums about why certain 5.1 and 7.1 video files are not being pushed to the surrounds and sub. Everything considered, LG is offering the most comprehensive audio codec support I've come across so far in my reviews. LG gets 2 points here for being super cool. The two systems have a number of similarities and sound control options. Simple treble bass adjustment, channel level adjustment, sound sync to fix audio delays, and sound modes that do things like upscale stereo to 9.1.4, adjust EQ and channel zone volumes. For the 11, bass boost and the movie sound modes force the surrounds and bass to get involved. For the Q, all modes except standard mode upscales audio files to 9.1.4. Differences: LG has two room calibration tools, a one-time fix tool that analyzes the room and does a one-time global adjustment to your audio, similar to Sonos TruePlay where it plays funny sounds and confuses your family while it calibrates. You also have an AI Sound Pro mode that adjusts the sound on the fly. To be honest, I didn't find that either of these tools led to a noticeable improvement in my somewhat limited experience. Perhaps your experience is different. LG has two night sound modes, nighttime and DRC. Nighttime is generalized across all audio formats. DRC is DTS specific. However, both tools flatten the sound so the peak sounds are softer and the soft sounds are made more audible, mostly helping with dialogue comprehension. The 11 has a separate setting independent of sound mode that lets you choose whether you always want the rear speakers to play sound. The 11 also has an auto volume function that if turned on attenuates sudden increases in volume. Samsung has advanced EQ and the option to use Q Symphony if you have a Samsung 2020 TV or later. Q Symphony reinforces the soundbar sound with TV speakers. Disappointingly, I have not yet to experience that feature, though the internet does not seem to be giving this feature a resounding applause. Also, up until this last paragraph, I thought TV playing with the soundbar is a bug, not a feature. I'll be nice and give each a point. Ports. You got a lot of similarities. You got an ER connection, so your enhanced audio return channel that supports uncompressed 3D audio. Two HDMI pass-throughs that support 4K 60 frames per second, that also support uncompressed 3D audio. With these systems, you don't need to worry if your TV has eARC because you can plug those Blu-ray systems directly into the bar. So that's very good. Each system also has a legacy optical connection, for some reason. Differences: as mentioned, LG has a USB connection for audio playback, including high-res audio support. LG's pass-through support HDR10 and Dolby Vision. The Q supports HDR10 and 10+, but not Dolby Vision as a pass-through. Samsung's ports are on the bottom and to the side, which I find somewhat awkward to deal with. LG's connection is on the back, so straight into the wall, no 90-degree turns or funny business. I think how you score this is largely dependent on your feelings around HDR10+ and Dolby Vision. Altogether, LG gets the point with USB playback and supporting multiple HDR formats and arguably the most desired one, Dolby Vision. I'll give each an honorary point for enabling lossless 3D sound with their pass-throughs. It's clear they both take this seriously. Samsung claims that the Q can connect to the TV via Wi-Fi. I don't see why you would give up a physical connection on such an expensive soundbar, and it does not seem that the functionality is enabled quite yet. Status display. With the LG, you get a single display on the front in between the center and center right speakers. It's big enough to see from across the room while you sit. It's a two-parted display. The bottom is a simple series of lines intended to give you a sense of where you are on the volume scale and provide feedback that a command was received. Okay, Google, play Spotify. The upper part of this two-parted display gives you input information and visual guidance when adjusting EQ, channel levels, and sound modes. And as is customary, it gives you confirmation if you are listening to 3D sound. The display is good. Still would prefer no scrolling. I thought in 2020 we could get rid of scrolling unless doing it ironically. Guess not. A controversial part of the display is that it doesn't turn off. It dims but doesn't completely go away. I'm particularly sensitive to floating, largely useless LED lights. I've spent a lot of time covering them with tape in my bedroom. In this case, I would prefer that the display not be on all the time, but it has not annoyed me as much as I might have predicted. LG, why do you need to stay on? Make it light up when you move the remote or make changes in the app. Samsung's display is very small. They also, I suppose, just flipped a coin and decided to put the display on top of the bar, making it far from visible when sitting. This monumental blunder is a money-making opportunity to sell a little mirror that allows the user to see the display while sitting. Such a poor design choice. Keeps me up at night pondering the decision process on that one. You know, if you can't get off your butt to see the display, you really don't want to see it. See, when you're dealing with 7 channel regions, there's a fair chance you want to adjust these channels while sitting in your favorite TV spot. Trademarked. As one cannot adjust these zones on the app, you, the customer, are dared to leave your sweet spot, hover over the bar, and stare at a tiny scrolly screen as you toggle through and adjust the zones. To add insult to injury, you don't have ready access to that customary 3D audio message that confirms you are getting 3D sound. Don't get me wrong, it reads on the top, but you just can't see it from where you're sitting. Samsung softens the blow a little bit by putting a simple 3 LED display on the front to confirm volume changes, voice assistant activations, Bluetooth pairing mode, a microphone mute indicator, which is all appreciated but does not come close to absolving their sins. Both soundbars have an opportunity to delight their more enthusiastic customers. That sounds like a pretty darn good euphemism for nerdy, by telling us what audio is playing. So Dolby Digital 5.1, LPCM 7.1, 24-bit FLAC. This kind of communication is standard for 3D sound. I don't see why they stopped there. Throw the audio files a bone, giving LG an extra large shiny point simply for not putting their display on top of the bar. Controls. Each system can be controlled with buttons on the bar, with the remote, and with an app. The 11 has 7 touch controls on the top. Power, function, or input, we'll split the difference and just go with funput. Volume up, down, a play pause button, we got mic mute, and a dedicated voice assistant button. The remote feels exceedingly cheap, like toddler toy cheap, and the buttons appear to be designed for those of a certain age. Jitterbug of remotes certainly comes to mind. On this remote, you have access to power, volume, input, sound modes, EQ, channel zone adjustments, voice assistant, night mode, and controls to navigate your USB drive. Dirty little secret, from a practical standpoint, it's all I ever wanted from a remote. You just can't miss. It's very readable. The 11's app is dedicated to speakers. Other than the ability to evoke the voice assistant, you can do everything on the app, including adjusting channel zones, which is something I'm begging Samsung to support in their app. The app is also where you would execute your AI sound calibrations and other speaker settings. Honestly, the look of the app does not scream commercial quality, but it seems to work fairly well. The Q has 5 clicky controls on the top, a combo function power button, volume up, down, and mic mute. You can activate the voice assistant by holding down the power button. The remote size is the same as your standard Samsung remote, and it feels exceedingly high-end compared to the LG remote. The two remotes do largely the same things. Where LG has quick access to their night mode and voice assistant, Samsung has the Bluetooth pairing button right on the remote. The SmartThings app can control most of the bar's functionality, but leaves out zone channel adjustments, which really disappoints because it is so painstaking to complete with the remote. It's like having friends over for some Coca-Colas to relax and chat, but not being allowed to sit down. LG gets the win here, mostly because you can control channel settings from the app, which is the correct, TM, way to perform such a task. Samsung, if you're listening, simple tasks, remote. Complicated tasks, app. Device streaming, the 11 is Chromecast compatible, which opens up a lot of content for high quality Wi-Fi streaming. I suppose the downside is that all this content is trapped in individual apps instead of one consolidated app. But nonetheless, a solid add for the 11. You also have the option to pair the device via Bluetooth, so in the end you can stream anything, though Bluetooth streaming is an inferior option. You get less data transfer and you have more of a physical distance tether. The Q. With Wi-Fi streaming, you have Spotify Connect. You also have Bluetooth. You can connect by pressing the pair button on the remote. Or if you're an Android user with 8.1 or later, you can just tap the bar with your phone. It technically works, but not well enough that you would ever want to use it. Expect maybe 6 to 8 taps on average to get it to work. You will have to enable this function in your SmartThings app. Let me know if it works for you. 11 gets a point for supporting Chromecast. Voice assistants. Both bars have a built-in microphone. The 11 supports Google Assistant, which ties in well with Chromecast support, so there's good synergy there. One of the things I really like about the implementation is the Assistant button on the remote. I typically find it exhausting to yell at a speaker to get its attention, especially from across the room. You might also have other Googles laying around you don't want to wake up. Unfortunately, like the Q950T, I felt that the Google Assistant volume was way higher than the TV volume, which really annoyed me in my last review. So maybe expect to get some unpleasant volume levels if you're switching from TV to, say, music with Google Assistant. I do appreciate that there's a dedicated button on the bar, so if you're already walking around, you can just quickly touch it and ask it to play music. The Q supports the Amazon Alexa, my complaints still apply. The Alexa voice is far too loud relative to the TV. Spotify through Alexa continues not to work, even after a few network resets. Apple Music is also not supported, where both of these services work just fine on a traditional Alexa device, or a 2020 Sonos Soundbar. I panned Samsung for this, and LG is equally guilty. When you evoke the assistant, the FunPut changes to Wi-Fi, and the bar hands back the sound to the TV speakers. Soundbars, bring it in, bro time. Yes, I know they're dudes. I mean, when you photograph every inch, you figure it out. Anyway, never, ever, 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 never give the sound back to the TV. No one wants to hear a podcast mixed with audio coming from the TV speakers. No one. Samsung TVs, however, seem to want to change the TV volume to whatever the bar volume is. So that's really exciting. And LG TV's volume, for reference, just stays at 0. Silly Samsung software. Put them back. You're going to think I'm biased here towards Google Assistant. I'm not. I have way more Alexa devices in my house. But LG gets a point for implementing a voice assistant that actually works. Sound quality. So here we are. There's no really getting around this. Overall, the sound falls a little short on the 11. Been working hard on my anticlimactic reveals. This pains me to say because otherwise I'm kind of fond of the system. Don't get me wrong, you get plenty of volume and fill the room with decent sound. But not once did I get a flutter or chill from either music nor 3D sound. Nor did I think to myself, well, LG really nailed it. I could just tell my eardrums were not being cradled by a master. For music, I found the higher frequencies and particular synth beats to be a little harsh, especially when coming out of the surrounds. Kinda distracting and sore thumbish. The bass definitely has some oomph, but perhaps with underwhelming definition and to the peril of some of the other midtones. Overall music playback fell short in excellence in terms of clarity, nuance, and warmth, and comes across a little thin, a little empty. The 11 could certainly benefit from more mid-level adjustments, which is one of the few adjustments you don't get on this system. Don't get me wrong, this is far from a catastrophe. It's not unlistenable. It's just not as refined as you might hope. I found I was most satisfied when I didn't have extraordinary expectations. So watching Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse in Dolby Digital 5.1, it sounded perfectly fine. Dialogue was clear, bass didn't overwhelm. I didn't get that little whinge of disappointment. But moving to Dolby True HD, where your expectations are at their peak, and I keep using Mad Max as my 3D sound reference. It's a good one. I got an Atmos bubble, but it was not an especially great one. I didn't have that sync moment where I felt locked in, where I became one with the sound. All around you, no, didn't happen. See, this soundbar is not excellent at rendering the sound event, nor placing it where it's supposed to go. You get that sensation of a vehicle driving over your shoulder, but maybe you have trouble differentiating the location of an engine rev and an explosion. Maybe the dialogue is not as isolated and clearly positioned as you might hope. You're reaching for less firework and more plot, less quantity and more quality. If you're on a singular mission to find peak soundbar 3D sound, this may not be the bar for you, at least based on my week of exposure. The Q, oh the Q. Music. Well, I think music actually sounds noticeably better on the Q950T. I'd say I felt like I was being handled by a more sophisticated soundsmith. I didn't find any parts of the highs nor lows grating or overwhelming. The sound felt more balanced. It was able to incorporate some more of those good mid-tone dynamics while keeping the vocals and bass from seeming muddled or woolly. I don't want to sound over the top, but I felt like it was able to achieve that bubbly living sound that kind of lifts your mood and bites you in. It seems more adept at pushing a 2-channel source to a 14-channel mix, like a seasoned band that's comfortable with each other. At least with maybe some channel EQ coaxing. The firmware update, I think, really improved a lot of these dynamics, or at least reduced those instances when the sound was very, very muddled in my previous testing. I still can't tell whether it's quality or novel, but if you enjoy kind of laying back with your eyes closed and taking in all the layers of a song, the extra channels kind of give you more to work with. I would be willing to suggest that some may prefer the Q950T over the Q90 sound. Go figure. The Q90 is a very impressive sounding soundbar. While I'm rarely blown away by the Atmos bubble with these kinds of systems, I did continue to find 3D sound to be fairly convincing. I think Samsung gives you sharper glasses to image the scene it's trying to create. I believe there to be better separation and clarity on the sound objects, less stepping on each other's feet or say the bass overstepping its bounds. All this being said, I would recommend that you spend some time making adjustments to really find that mix that works for you. You may not get that great sound right out of the box. It's the privilege and burden of having some control over so many channels. The surrounds and subs on both systems are prone to the occasional cutout or crackle. It would seem that the soundbar communicates with its subordinates on similar frequencies as mesh router systems. If you have a mesh router system, you may experience more issues than if not. I have an Eero mesh routing system, and I didn't experience anything too terrible on this front on this round of testing. However, at the very least, I would be careful not to place routers or mesh hubs right next to the subs or surrounds. I also discovered a rather nasty behavior on the Q that should give you pause. When streaming video, the soundbar at times, not all the time, will drop out for a second or so. During the sessions when it does drop out, it maybe drops out twice a minute or every few minutes, but enough to make it unlistenable. A warning, this might get fixed, but it's not fixed yet, even with the latest software. Overall, Samsung wins on sound, no question. The sound quality will be my biggest recant from my previous review. Going to assign 3 points here, though I'm kind of sweeping the soundbar cutout issue under the rug a little bit. I think the story here is pretty clear. The 11 is a well-rounded system. It all seems well considered and more than adequate. The Q, though improved from its initial release, is not a joy to interact with. It has limited app support, the display on the top of the bar, its dropping of the ball on audio format support with limited DTS and no LPCM support fosters a lot of frustration and confusion. It also still has stability issues, in particular the sound dropout tendency. But in terms of its #1 mission, creating good sound, it performs remarkably well. Overall better than the Q90R, I dare say. A little more sweetness and a little less Mac truck maybe. Credit where credit is due. I value the complete experience, the attention to detail and how a customer may interact with the product. LG delivers a less frustrating, more even experience. I'm confident the 11 will satisfy the vast majority of customers. Here's how I'll deliver my recommendation if you're set on buying one of these two soundbars. If you're buying a soundbar really just for the best TV sound soundbars can deliver, and perhaps don't live in an apartment, and are totally immune to pain points I described, the Q950T may be for you. You'll have some really great audio experiences, and you'll have fun showing your friends what it can do. Everyone else, maybe consider the 11. If you're still there, I thank you for sticking around. I know my videos are a bigger commitment than the average YouTube video. As such, I hope you gained a lot of useful insights. If you like this video, maybe take some time to subscribe, like, and write a comment. Other than that, I think I'm going to wrap it up. Catch you on the next one.